So just to start off again, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Niels Oosthuizen. I work for Huawei Brothers South Africa. I'm a qualified electrical engineer, and I will be presenting today on the Huawei commercial and industrial solutions. So a brief introduction about Huawei Brothers and who we are. So the company was founded in 1977. Excuse me, I just want to go back. The company was founded in 1977 in Lebanon, and from there, as you can see on the timeline down here below, the company has expanded into different regions, where it went over to UAE in 1992, Nigeria in 1996, and then from there it also expanded to Afghanistan, Kuwait, Ghana, Qatar, Uganda, South Africa in 2016, and then in 2017 a dedicated solar division was started at the 40-year celebration of the company, and thereafter we also opened branches in Pakistan and Kenya, and we're also looking forward to going on to 2022 and beyond. So this year marks the 45th year where Huawei is active as a company. On this map that you can see in front of you, that's just the global reach that Huawei has got. So each flag represents a country where Huawei is active, either with a branch or they've got a distribution partner or a distribution reseller, either on the generator side or on the solar side, as Huawei Brothers originally started as a generator company, but then the company evolved together with the times and technologies into renewable energies. At the Huawei Brothers, we have 6 key pillars in supporting our EPC customers. The very first one is product supply. It's a very straightforward one. We supply you with the products needed, so that's just moving the boxes. The second pillar is training. Training is webinars or webinars like this one that we are presenting today. And then we also have various training material available that we can share with you offline, or you can even go through the Huawei Solar Installer course, which will then give you background information on all of the systems that's available, whether it's residential, CNI, or utility. The third pillar is engineering support. So at Huawei Brothers, we have various engineers that's trained in solar and also been approved by Huawei or went through the Huawei certifications. So this engineering support that we can provide you or help you with is absolutely free of charge, so there's no charge to you. So what it means is that if you have projects that's upcoming, you can send it through to us and our engineers can have a look at it for you. We can do some recommendations for you on how we can maybe optimize the system for you, and even how we can assist you with which products to use. Then the fourth pillar is the leads. So as Huawei Brothers is a big organization, sometimes we have large customers that comes directly to Huawei, but as the Huawei Brothers, we do not want to compete with our customers. We believe in forming strategic partnerships. So we will then advise you guys on leads to say that, listen, we've been approached by this company, they're looking at this project, this size, and we will then pass it on to you. The fifth pillar, referral to finance. So also, if you've got a project on your side that you would like to initiate, you can send us the information and we can put you into direct contact with financing houses. So it's either people that we have a direct connection with that can assist you with financing, because we all know that finance is sometimes the biggest hurdle to jump over when it comes to PV projects, as there's a large upfront investment that's needed. Then the sixth pillar, which is almost the most important pillar, is after-sales support. So if we look back to pillar number 1, which is product supply, we are not only in this game to just sell you a product and after we sold it, you're just a nobody to us or we disappear because, we've done our job. No, we also provide you with after-sales support. After-sales support can be in various instances. It can be warranty extensions. It can either be warranty claims where you've had an issue with an inverter. We can assist you to identify and solve the problem. And if the problem has been identified and it's unsolvable, we'll then assist you with the warranty process. But the after-sales support does not only affect warranties or problems. We can also be involved in your system and have a look at it to ensure that you've got optimal functioning. So please do make use of this after-sales support service that we provide. So Jubaili Brothers has partnered with Huawei on inverters, and the reason why we've done it is that Huawei inverters provide you with higher yields, which means more energy. Huawei has also got a smart operations and maintenance systems, which decreases your operational expenses. And then the inverters are also safe and reliable with up to 25 years reliability. I just want to mention that the standard inverter warranty for the Huawei is 5 years, but from there it can be extended all the way up to 25 years. And then this warranty also does not need to be purchased up front. You can purchase it at any time during the initial warranty. So Jubaili Brothers is a value-added partner for Huawei. What that means is that Huawei does not sell directly to the public, so they do not sell to just anybody. They partner with us specifically, and then we are your connection between yourselves and Huawei. So we support the product in pre-sales as well as after-sales service. And then Jubaili Brothers is also a certified service partner for Huawei. And what that means is that we've got engineers that's been specifically trained or went through Huawei certifications, which allows them to easily diagnose problems and then be able to assist you in monitoring your systems and then solving any issues that might arise. So if you want to upgrade your solar experience, you should definitely partner with us as Jubaili Brothers and Huawei, and we will then help you with smart commercial and industrial PV solutions. So briefly, this is just the content that we will be covering today. It's a brief introduction of Huawei as a country. We will then focus on the commercial and industrial range of Huawei inverters. We will briefly look at the PV optimizers that's available, the Fusion Solar app, and then just a summary of this whole presentation. So looking at Huawei as a company, Huawei was rated number 44 on the global Fortune 500. It's got more than 197,000 employees, active in more than 170 countries. And then 53.4% of its employees is dedicated to research and development, and it's number 3 in research and development. So what all of these numbers means is that Huawei actually spends a lot on research and development. So there's continuous improvement of the products, and it's not just a single product that's come out, sold to the market, and when one product is dead, they jump over to the next one. Also in this graph, you can see that Huawei has constantly been creating value for its customers over the years. So you can just see the growth of Huawei since 2014 up until 2020. And then these numbers here was 2021 Q3. So this can be updated to the latest numbers. Over to the next slide. So as I mentioned, Huawei has got sustained investment and in the research and development, and it drives its technology. So it spends more than 10% annually, accumulated $70 billion over the past decade just on research and development. And it's been ranked 5th in the 2018 EU Industrial Research and Development Investment Scoreboard by the European Commission. By the end of 2019, a total of 80,000 plus patents applications have been granted. Above 90% were invention patents, meaning it was new technology that wasn't current on the market. It's got membership in more than 400 plus standard organizations, industry alliances, and open source communities, with 400 plus key positions, 5,000 plus standard contributions submitted in the whole year, and nearly 60,000 contributions submitted in total. So an introduction to Huawei Fusion Solar CNI Smart PV solution. In this first graph on the left, you can see it's a comparison between central inverter systems and string inverters. And you can see that since 2016 up until 2021, there's been a steady decline in central inverters and a steady rise in string inverters. When it comes to the string inverter technology, Huawei has got more than 50% of the market segment for string inverters. Huawei was also rated the #1 global inverter shipment from 2015 all the way to 2019. And I can also confirm that Huawei was the #1 shipment in 2020 with 23% market share, and the closest competitor only had 18% market share. So why you should also focus on Huawei, or why we decided to partner with Huawei, is that Huawei can offer you the complete solution for PV. They've got solutions available in residential, commercial, industrial, and utility scale as well. On the residential, they also have their own smart energy storage system, so they've got their own batteries and battery management system. And then on the utility scale, there's also been a release now on the utility scale energy storage solutions. So, as I mentioned before, in this presentation, we will be focusing on the commercial and industrial solutions of Huawei. So Huawei Fusion Solar allows you to have a zero carbon power generation. They've got active safety systems in the CNI market, as well as the smart operations and maintenance on the CNI systems. In this diagram below, you can see it's a commercial and industrial single line diagram. The items marked in red is the inverter, the smart logger, as well as the power sensor, and then also the Fusion Solar management system. So all of these systems can directly be bought from Huawei, or Huawei has got their own branded products. The items not marked in red, like your module, your AC combiner box, weather station, it's not items directly involved with Huawei, but we do support third-party participants with these products. And then all of these third-party products you can also get from us as Jubilee Brothers Solar. So we can assist you on anything that you need for the complete system. So moving over to our next slides, where we'll now be focusing on the commercial and industrial inverters from Huawei. The first slide is actually a comparison between all the different ranges that's available. The first range would be from 12 to about 20 kTL M2. The M2 is just, the M is to indicate that it's a three-phase inverter, and the 2 is the revision number. So this was the second revision of the specific range of inverter. So this is typically your smallest range of commercial and industrial inverters. Anything less than the 12 kTL, so going through to a 10 kTL M1, Huawei sees that as a residential installation. Our next segment would be the 29.9 or the 30 kTL all the way to 30 kTL. And then larger systems is the 50 to 60. And then the most common or most popular inverter used in South Africa, and I believe in Africa as well, is the 100 kTL from Huawei. So in this table below, there's a comparison between the inverters. So if we look at the smaller one first, it's got 2 MPPTs with 2 inputs per MPPT. So that means that you can connect a total of 4 strings on one of these inverters. So this inverter is commissioned via the built-in WLAN, so you don't need to buy anything additional just to do the local commissioning. But then on communication, the smaller inverter supports the Smart Dongle WLAN FE. The FE is fast Ethernet, so you can connect this inverter directly to your router so that you can share information to the Huawei cloud, so that you can have real-time access to your system, either via the app or via the web interface. It also supports Smart Dongle 4G. The 4G is if perhaps you don't have a steady internet available, or if the installation site is in a remote location, then you will have to make use of the 4G connectivity. So it will, as long as there's an active cell phone tower in the area and there's a cell phone signal, then all of the information can still be made available in real time. Then a third option on communication is the Smart Logger 3000A. The Smart Logger 3000A is just a more advanced version of communication. The Smart Logger supports all of these communication devices in its own. So it supports WLAN, WLAN FE, 4G, RS485, and Modbus communication as well. The smaller range of inverters has got built-in AFCI. AFCI is arc fault current interruption. It's got built-in PID recovery, and then it also supports ripple control interface. The maximum current per MPPT is 22 amps. So please note that this maximum current, 22 amp, make sure that when you do your designs and you have 2 strings that's connecting to 1 MPPT, that you are less than this 22 amp. The latest PV modules, which is about 600 watt, they've got a higher short circuit current of about 13 amp. So you will still be able to use them, but then you might only have 1 string connected on the MPPT, because as soon as you connect the 2 strings, the current will add up and you'll have 26 amps. So please note that on the smaller size inverter. So going over to the next range in the CNI, which is more intermediate range, it's ranging from 29.9 or 30 all the way to 40. The difference between this one and the previous one is now you've got 4 MPPTs built into the inverter, which allows you 8 strings connection. Again, local commissioning is via the built-in WLAN, and then communication models is smart dongle, WLAN FE, 4G, as well as the 3000A smart logger. AFCI is built in, PID Recovery is built in, and ripple control is also active on this segment of inverters. Then please note that on these sets of inverters, specifically the M3 range, the maximum current per MPPT has increased to 26 amps. So you will be definitely be able to use 2 strings on 1 MPPT, and it will be safe for both the system as well as the inverter. So going over to the larger segments of commercial and industrial. So the 50 and 60 kTL, the difference between them and the previous ones is now you've got 6 MPPTs with a total of 12 strings input. So you will note that as the size of the inverter is increasing, you've got more MPPTs. So what this allows you is it actually allows you a saving, because you don't need to add an extra combiner box to then take a single string or 2 strings to your inverter. The inverter has got multiple MPPTs, so it's actually a saving on your capital expenditure. So local commissioning on the 50 and 60 kTL. So 50 and 60 kTL doesn't have built-in WLAN, so you would need to use the USB WLAN adapter. A mention on this one as well is that if you don't have the WLAN adapter, you can use your normal USB cable with your cell phone and actually connect your cell phone directly to the inverter, and then you can do the commissioning or local commissioning via the Fusion Solar app. Communication. So after you've commissioned the system and you want to do your real-time monitoring of the system, communication supported is the Smart Logger 3000A as well as the Smart Dongle 4G. Please note that this inverter, the 5060 kTL, doesn't support the WLAN FE, so you would have to use the Smart Logger 3000A if you want to connect an Ethernet cable or a router to this inverter. Maximum current for this inverter per MPPT is 22 amps. Then moving over to the more popular 100 kTL, your inputs is now 20 strings total with 10 MPPTs. Commissioning, again, you can use the USB WLAN adapter from Huawei, or you can use your cell phone cable directly connected to the inverter with the Fusion Solar app. Communication supported is the Smart Logger 3000A and the Smart Dongle 4G. Then AFCI, the arc fault circuit interrupter. So it's indicated as optional for this 100 kTL model. So you can either have the 100 kTL M1 without AFCI, or if you do need AFCI, you should just specify it in the country or region that you're in. In some regions, they refer to it as the M1 Pro model. But in South Africa, I can confirm that we only bring in the 100 kTL M1 Pro version, basically. So all of the 100 kTLs that's being sold in South Africa will have built-in AFCI. And then note again that the maximum current per MPPT is 26 amps, which means it supports all the newer high-powered modules, which has got a short-circuit current of about 13 amps. So moving over to the next slide on the Huawei CNI inverters. So Huawei has done a thorough approach to the system. So because the inverters has got a 25-year warranty, so it's a really long lifetime that they guarantee on. So in their research, when they first approached this market, they've identified certain components as high failure components. And with their design, they've actually taken those components out to ensure that the inverter can last its full lifespan of about 25 years. So the first thing that's been removed is fuses. So Huawei inverters has got a fuseless design. It's actually got DC isolation switches at the bottom side of the inverter to disconnect your PVs, your PV input strings. There's no LCD screen, and there's also no buttons. A button is something that people tend to like to press and cause havoc in the system. So the whole approach on the Huawei system was to have it more reliable, and then in the modern age that we live in, everything is accessible either via your cell phone or the internet on your laptop. And then the actual reduction of no buttons and no LCDs is that if you do have somebody that's I don't want to call it incompetent, but you don't have people that's fiddling with the inverter that don't know what they're doing. So only the people with the relevant skills and knowledge will have access to the online services of these inverters. So also in adding to the reliability of the Huawei inverters. So Huawei, as we all know, is actually a telecommunications company, and they've used all of the experience from the telecommunications and actually combined it into the solar inverter department. So they make use of natural cooling, and this natural cooling method has been verified by the telecoms and solar applications. So all of this combined, the natural cooling, no fuses, no LCD, and no buttons, that all allows for the inverters to have high reliability. So you've got less failure rates, and then obviously less failure rates equals to higher yields, which then increases your system performance. Okay, as I've mentioned, Huawei inverters are compatible with high-powered PV modules, like the 100 kTL, which supports the 26 ampere MPPT. I just want to make a note here. Please do have a look at the data sheets, or do make contact with us if you're unsure if a specific inverter or specific module will work with the inverter. As we've shown before, that there are still inverters that's only got a 22 amp MPPT, so they will then not be compatible with these panels if you do want to make use of 2 strings per MPPT. Otherwise, they are 100% compatible. So moving over to the next slide is just the active safety of the Fusion Solar CNI Smart PV solution. So all of these areas here is safety features that's included in the Huawei inverters. So it will detect all of this automatically. So excessive low PV string parallel resistance, excessively high PV string series resistance, abnormal curve near the MPP in the string, slight current mismatch, missing configuration of the PV string, open circuit of the PV string, current mismatch in the PV string, abnormal PV current output, low PV short circuit current, excessive low irradiance, scanning data invalid, low PV string power, or no string connected. I just want to add in a note over here is that please, if you do pick up on your system that one of these faults or safety issues has been identified, do not ignore it simply just because the inverter managed to restart a day or an hour or 3 hours afterwards without the actual fault being cleared. If a fault has been identified by the inverter, please do make time to actually inspect the fault to ensure that the installation is up to standard, because the inverter will not just flag these issues if they are not present. So this might affect your system in the long run. So please do have a look at the safety features or the safety issues that's been highlighted by the inverter. Moving over to the next slide is the AFCI. I already said that what is it? So AFCI, it's an arc fault circuit interrupter. And what is it? So it's an electrical breakdown of air that produces a prolonged electrical discharge. It can reach temperatures of over 3,000 degrees Celsius, which can easily start a fire. So it poses a significant risk to firefighters under high DC voltage and current. So we are all familiar, or most of us should be familiar with the difference between DC and AC. And then if you look at a DC arc, it takes a lot longer to extinguish versus a AC one. So this is definitely a high risk, or a good feature that's been incorporated into the Huawei inverters, is this proactively mitigation of the fire risk or the electric arc fault detection. So safety hazards has become primary challenge for the PV and energy storage systems. Safety requirements shall become mandatory standards. So in this slide here, you can just see various instances of PV plant failures. These plants are not necessarily Huawei plants, but it is just plants in general that's been identified, or what fires or hazards has occurred. I know in South Africa, we recently had a big fire at one of the popular estates in South Africa, where it was actually a battery management system that failed. But again, it was a DC arc that caused the fire. So a lot of the countries is now incorporating mandatory standards to ensure that PV systems are all safe and up to standard. So on the AFCI, so On the Huawei inverters, there's automatic shutdown in 2 seconds, meeting the USUL 1699B standard. Can accurately detect and confirm the PV arcing with less false alarms. And then because the Huawei inverters has got artificial intelligence powered AFCI, it supports self-learning new types of arcing for future higher safety. Continuing on the AFCI, so Huawei has tailored their AFCI for enhanced active arcing protection. So if you look at the normal standard, you only need to detect it up to a distance of 80 meters, but Huawei, you can detect AFCI up to 150% better than the standard, which is then 200 meters. So also looking at the standards, you only need to detect up to 16 amp, but on Huawei, it's already certified and tested 26 amp, so it's 26% better than the standard. So VCR protection has become the preferred solution for customers. This is just a factory in the Netherlands, a printing factory. Roof area is 15,000 square meters. They've used 2,500 KTL inverters. They've done this connection at the end of 2021. So AntiPID, what is PID? It's potential induced degradation. It is an effect that occurs on the PV panel sides, and it's an effect that can be increased by high temperature or high humidity. So what causes PID? So it's a potential difference on the anode ions that flows from the glass plate into the semiconductor material of the solar cell, and it affects the cell performance. So as I've mentioned, high humidity and high temperature and contamination actually increases this PID effect. Most of the modern tier 1 PV modules will actually state that their panels are immune, or there won't be any PID effect on them, but definitely there is some PID effect that can occur. But the Huawei has got their own solution for AntiPID. So if we move over to the next slide, it's just a comparison between Huawei inverters and the competitors, or a certain competitor. So Huawei inverters has got built-in PID recovery module, and because you've got it built into the inverter, there's no need for extra equipment. So this lowers your capital expenditure, and there's no retrofit required. So the Huawei AntiPID effectively repairs the module performance to most of its initial power output. And then the recovery is done at nighttime with less than 5 watt night consumption. And we do recommend that you enable this in the app during your initial setup. But of course, if you do not wish to use this function, you can have it disabled if you really want to save that 5 megawatt or 5 watts, sorry, not megawatt, definitely 5 watt consumption at night. But then it's also a function that can be added later on as well. So if you do pick up there's some problem on your panels, and you do believe that the PID effect can have an effect on it, you can always add this function or enable it at a later stage again. So the PID recovery, it's a built-in to secure better module performance. So when the inverters are off-grid at night, an offset DC voltage is applied between the inverter PV negative and ground. This effectively increases the voltage of the PV string with respect to the ground. So a case study, a Huawei inverter with PID recovery increases energy yield by about 1.59% within 6 months. So in this table below, you can actually see the case study or the test that was done. So this is the normal system setup without PID recovery, and this is the setup with the PID recovery. And you can see that the difference in yield is actually increasing over time instead of decreasing over time. So this page here is a product highlight of the 12 up to 20 KTL M2. Note the efficiency or maximum efficiency of the inverter is 98.65%. 2 MPPTs with 4 inputs. The MPPT voltage range is between 160 and 950 volt. And then the maximum current supported per MPPT is 22 amp. A nice feature about this specific inverter is 25 kilograms, so it's lighter and smaller than most of the competitors, which means that it can actually be handled and installed by a single person only, and no need for additional expenditure on labor. The next product highlight would be the 30 to 40 KTL M3 range. Again, note the very high efficiency, 98.7, maximum current 26 amp, 4 MPPTs, 8 inputs. The MPPT voltage ranges between 200 and 1000 volts. So this lower 200 volts is actually the startup of the inverter. So in comparison with competitors, you actually get higher yields out of the system because the system can start up earlier and then also shut down later. Then continuing with the product spotlight, smart dongle. So if you want to use the smart dongle for communication, you only need to use one device or one smart dongle, and you can connect up to 10 devices on it. And then the WLAN dongle is compatible with the 40 kTL and below as a master inverter and any inverter as a slave inverter. So inverter can be commissioned and synchronized via a single dongle, and the grid-connected power control can be achieved through the WLAN FE dongle. So if you use the smart dongle as your communication device, you can connect it on any single inverter within the range. You don't have to connect it on inverter 1 or inverter 10. It can be any inverter within the range, as long as your power sensor is connected to that very same inverter. So that's just an important note to remember. Our next product highlight is the 50 or 60 kTL M0. Maximum efficiency is 98.7. Please note the maximum current 22 amps, 6 MPPTs with 12 inputs. So this larger size of inverter, you can see it's 74 kilograms. It's still lighter and smaller in comparison with competitors, but I think for 74 kgs, you definitely need at least 2 people to handle it safely. MPPT voltage range is again from 200 to 1000 volts. So you're just decreasing your linear time when the inverter is actually available online. Then the next product highlight is the most popular, the 100 kTL M1 with AFCI. Maximum efficiency 98.7, maximum current 26 amps, which means it supports the higher powered modules. Then 100 kTL, it's a compact design, 43 kilograms, so it's lighter and smaller. I just believe that there might be a mistake on the weight of this inverter. I believe it's more than 43, but I can just confirm it on the data sheet. Again, MPPT voltage between 200 and 1000 volt. Products for Spotlight is on the Smart Logger 3000A. As I've mentioned before, it's a communication device. The Smart Logger 3000A incorporates all of the communication methods, whether it's WLAN, WLAN FE, RS485, 2G, 3G, 4G. So you just have a lot more options available when using the Smart Logger 3000A. The Smart Logger 3000A, you can connect up to 80 devices. So it's, when we say 80 devices, it's 80 either inverters or a weather station or a power sensor. So in total 80. You've got about 3 RS485 communication ports on the bottom side. Each device supporting, or each port supports a maximum of 30 devices. But just bear in mind that between the 3 ports, all 3 of them cannot exceed 80. This below here is an example of using the Smart Logger 3000A on the RS485. You can go up to a maximum distance of 1000 meters. And then please note that if you do a daisy chain between inverters, that if you have a weather station, it should be the last in the daisy chain and not on the first one or even a random number in between. So if you do make use of a weather station, make sure that it's the last one in the daisy chain. So as I've mentioned, the maximum connected devices is 80. Communication interface is RS485. Also, you can also use AC M-Bus. Communication options to the cloud, either Ethernet or 4G via the built-in 4G module. Local commissioning options, you can do Ethernet through the web interface using a laptop, or you can still use your cell phone to do the local commissioning of the inverters with the built-in WLAN. So this built-in WLAN in the 3000A, that assists you on the bigger inverters, the 50 or 60 or 100 kTL that doesn't have the built-in WLAN. So moving over to the next slide, we're looking at the Fusion Solar CMI Smart PV solution, fast and easy commissioning. So everything you need is in one app, from local commissioning to the remote monitoring or the monitoring of your system afterwards. The commissioning is very easy. It's simple and swift, and it can be done in 4 easy steps. It's a convenient and reliable solution where your energy flow is illustrated. You have real-time data at any time from anywhere. So depending on your communication device, this data can either be available in 2 seconds or even 5 seconds. So 5 seconds is for the slower communication methods, if it's 4G, 2G, or 3G. And then if you have a fast Ethernet or an internet cable connected directly, your intervals can be as quick as 2 seconds. And then by using the app, you've got improved operations and maintenance experience. Your physical and logical module layout is seen on the app, and then you can also see module level performance management. So I just want to add a note that if you want module level performance management, you do have to use the optimizers. Otherwise, you're looking at string values and not module level. So continuing on the fast and easy commissioning, this is just a breakdown of how local commissioning is done and then plant registration. So this timeline here is the timeline that you would follow when you're doing the commissioning. Local commissioning refers to the commissioning of your inverter, so it's the initial setup. Plant registration, that's when the system is up and running and you would like to add it onto your app or onto the web interface so that you can see real-time data. So starting off, your first step is just the basic info settings. So auto identification of the grid code and time zone, so you don't need to specify it. Auto detection of local components. So even if you have a cascaded system of 10 inverters plus a power sensor, all of that is detected automatically. Just note that if it's a cascaded system, there is an option where you just need to enable it to double check that it's a cascaded system. And then after your system components have been picked up either automatically or if you have specified them, you also have the option to specify components individually. But then once the components has been identified, you can then set up the communication or management system. So it can either be WLAN, 4G, 3G, 2G, fast Ethernet communication. So once you specify the communication, then you're done with the local commissioning setup. When it comes to the plant registration, it's as easy as adding a new plant, and then you scan any device within the system and all components would be registered. So that's how quick and easy the commissioning is using the Huawei inverters. So focusing on the auto detection of the Huawei inverters or of the commissioning. So using the Huawei solution of auto detection, a system can be as quick as 1.5 to 3 minutes, where the competitor might be as long as 15 to 20 minutes. So this system here that I've used is a residential solution. It's got optimizers, it's got your energy storage system, smart power sensor, and a dongle. So it doesn't matter on the complexity or size of the system, it's as quick as 1.5 to 3 minutes. But on a competitor, it can take 5 to 8 minutes just on the inverter setup, and then an additional 10 to 15 minutes just for the setup of the energy storage system. So moving over to the power meters. So for export limitation, if you want to add this function, or if it's a requirement by your country as a law where you're not allowed to export any excess of power that's generated by your system into the national grid, then you have to make use of a smart power sensor or a third-party power meter. Going into the details, the Huawei specific smart power sensor is for an AC requirement of less than 170 kilowatts. So if your system is smaller than 170 kilowatt, then you can make use of the Huawei system. And then also just make sure that your grid incomer cables is smaller than 24 millimeters. A note that I would like to add here is that this AC requirement of less than 170, it does not specifically relate only to your PV. So if you only install a 60 kilowatt or 100 kilowatt PV system, but the actual grid requirement of the plant where the system is being installed is more than the 200 kilowatt, then this Huawei smart power sensor is not compatible. Then you have to go with a third-party power meter. So when are you going to use a third-party power meter? It's if your AC requirement is greater than 170 kilowatt, or if your grid incomer cable is larger than 24. Please, I just want to emphasize it again. The 170 kilowatt limit is not the size of the PV system, but the actual AC grid requirement or the AC size of the actual site that you're installing the system. We do have a list of third-party power meters that's applicable or compatible with the Huawei inverters. So if you're not sure if a specific power meter is compatible, you can just send us the details and we will confirm if it is compatible. And then sometimes if a meter is not listed on the list currently, we can always send the information through to Huawei to also just confirm if that meter would be compatible. So moving over to the PV optimizers, I'm just going to run briefly through this one. So Huawei has got their own optimizers. The current range is a 450 watt optimizer. Huawei has, well, they haven't released it yet, but Huawei is working on a 600 watt optimizer, which is going to be released now in the first quarter of 2022. The one optimizer fits almost all poly and mono PV modules in the market. This is just a power rating, it's 450, but like I said, we've got a 600 watt that's coming out now. Efficiency is 99.5. Advantages of the PV optimizers is you've got rapid voltage shutdown, so 0 volt quick voltage shutdown is possible when using the optimizer. When do you use the optimizers? So optimizers can be used if there is any possibility of shading in your system. As we've mentioned, Huawei is a string optimizer, so if there's one specific panel, it can be 1, 2, or 3, but if there's a panel in the string that's performing at a lower level compared to the rest, either due to shading or contamination, or even if it's a module fault, that whole string will be affected by that lowest point of panel if there's a fault on it, if there's no optimizers. But if you have optimizers present in the system, that 1 or 2 panels specifically, only they will perform at a reduced rating, but the rest of your string will just still perform as per normal. So the optimizers is definitely a solution that you should look at if you've got any of these possible problems on your site where shading can be caused by a vent, air conditioner, fencing, cell phone base station, or even a billboard that might put up some shade onto your system. So it's very important that when you do your initial site survey or site inspection, just have a look out for any of these factors that can affect your string performance. And then if the factor is present, it would be advisable to make use of optimizer. So the next slide is just a comparison case. So if you've got one rooftop with different orientations, this is just a graph that shows the yields, or the full optimizer system generates about 10 to 13% more energy per day than no optimizer system. So if this system is not optimized and you've just got maybe one string that's attaching all of these panels, then the panels that's got shade will affect the rest of the panels. But if the panels are optimized, then you will get greater performance out of the system. One thing to note on using the optimizers is that on the Huawei systems, you do not need to optimize each and every single panel. You only need to optimize the panel that's being affected. So if you've got an installation site with 100 panels, you don't need to optimize all 100. You can focus only on the 18 to 20 panels that might be affected by shading. So another advantage of using the PID optimizers is that you can have a maximum of 200% DC to AC oversizing, or a DC to AC ratio, when you're looking at a 5 kTL to 10 kTL. So this is more applicable to the residential. So if you want to know more about this 200% DC to AC ratio, make sure that you attend our residential webinars, or do make contact with us and we can assist you or provide you with more information on this. So next slide is, again, it's just a module level optimization. It's just showing that increase installed capacity by over 70%. So it's a roof with different orientations and angles. So if you were not using optimizers, you could only maybe use one segment of the roof, or use one string for one segment and a second string for another one. But if you're using the Huawei optimizers, you can actually make full use of the available roof area and then just have better performance. So in this table below, you can actually see that if you look at a common module without an optimizer, your system capacity would have only been 13.7 kilowatts if you only used one segment or two segments of the roof. But using the optimized solution, you can go up to 24 kilowatts, which gives you an additional 10.7 kilowatt. The actual yield from the system, if you have no optimizers, would have been 14.768 kilowatt hours per year. Fully optimized, you can go to about 26.51. So you've got a lot of better yields when using the optimizer if it's specifically a complex installation, as this roof is with different angles and directions that the roof is facing. So safety features of the PV optimizer. So without optimizers, you've got a high DC voltage when the system shut down, but with the optimizers, you've got 0 volt on the system, and it supports rapid shutdown. Pinpoint detection of faults. So arc fault positioning for easier troubleshooting. I would like to add a note: if you want to see pinpoint for a full installation, then you do need to have each and every module fitted with an optimizer. Otherwise, again, you will just be notified of a specific string, and then you will still need to identify on that string, which module it is. But definitely, it is a lot simpler. You don't have the expenditure of adding optimizers on each one, but the optional availability is there if it's a specific requirement that you do want. So if you do a full optimized solution, you can have a saving of up to 80% on on-site troubleshooting time and cost of accurate arc fault positioning. So 0 volt module level, voltage shutdown, touch safe, that's the rapid shutdown that I've mentioned. So the output voltage of each module will be reduced to 0 volt in the below cases during installation when the string is disconnected from the inverter or the inverter is turned off, or during your maintenance or emergency when the inverter or AC connection is shut down. This provides high safety for installers, maintenance personnel, as well as firefighters. And then the Huawei optimizers, they meet most advanced safety standards, NEC 2014 and 2017, and it's compliant with rapid shutdown. This is just a slide showing that the Huawei optimizers, how they've actually improved from the first generation to the second generation. They've actually become 50% smaller, which allows it to fit in the palm of your hand. It's comfortable, and the design philosophy is just a lot more compact. And then again, I would just like to mention that Huawei is releasing a 600 watt optimizer in the very near future. Moving over to the Fusion Solar app, remote monitoring and troubleshooting. So previously we focused more on the commissioning of it, but now we will focus on the remote monitoring and troubleshooting. You can access the information either via your phone or the web. Again, it's simple and swift, it's convenient and reliable, and you've got improved O&M experience by making use of this smart feature. So Fusion Solar CNI Smart PV Solution, remote monitoring troubleshooting, you have a full visualization of the operation of the plants anytime, anywhere. So on the home screen that you see, this first one here on the left is actually the web UI interface. You will see your PV panels, you will see an inverter, battery, load, you'll see your power sensor, and you will know whether you're importing power to the grid, from the grid, if you're allowed to export, if you are exporting, or if there's a limitation on power export. You will see that even though you might have 10 kilowatt or 100 kilowatt of PV available, your inverter is only producing 80 kilowatt. That's all dependent on the load and the active power control settings that's set on it. Then the figure on the right is just the home screen that you would see on your cell phone. Again, you will have very user-friendly interfaces showing your PV modules, battery, your grid, and your load, and you'll see the state of flow or the state of power as it's running through. Then you will also be able to see your yield and revenue statistics either per day, per month, per year, or actually the full lifetime of the system. Some nice facts that's also shared is just like your CO2 savings and stuff like that. A great feature of the Huawei inverters is the IV curve diagnostics. It's actually smart IV curve diagnosis, which allows you to identify up to 14 faults accurately without having to be on site. It's a system that's been designed online, so it's online smart IV curve diagnostics. System can be diagnosed as easy as 2 minutes. 100% of the string is being scanned, and auto-diagnostic report generation in about 10 minutes time. So if you compare the online smart IV curve versus the conventional offline diagnosis, you're looking at 2 minutes versus 1 day if you need to send somebody out to site to do the physical inspection. The Huawei system, you guaranteed 100% string scanning, but if somebody's out on site, only maybe 1 to 10% sample scanning, as they will just scan where they think a problem might be. And then the conventional method, you also have manual data analysis and report writing, where on Huawei it's an auto-generated report. Smart IV curve diagnostics 4.0, it's online and full diagnosis, reducing your only cost. So the recall ratio consistency accuracy is more than 95%. Worldwide application greater than 15 gigawatt. Advantages of the smart IV curve diagnosis is better adaptability, loss assessment, scheduled scanning. So on the scheduled scanning, you can schedule it as a weekly or monthly, and then have the reports auto-generated. So by the time you have a meeting or something, all of that information is available. It's integrated by ISVs. You get fine-grained data, and you've got higher availability of the system. So smart IV curve diagnosis is able to carry out online IV curves, so that's current voltage curve analysis on an entire string with advanced diagnostic algorithm. Scanning would help to find out and identify the string with low performance or faults, which would help to achieve proactive maintenance, higher operations and maintenance efficiency, and lower operational cost. The system is smart and efficient. It supports plant level, array level, and inverter level analysis and diagnosis. It automatically identifies different failure types and provides recovery suggestions. It's efficient as it's just a one-click scanning. It's done online, and it's the report is generated automatically within 15 minutes for a plant of about 5 megawatt. So this is just the content that we've already gone through. We've already done the introduction, CNI inverters, PV optimizers, Fusion Solar, and app. So thank you very much for attending this webinar. I hope that we've managed to answer most of your questions already. The question and answer mode was enabled on the presentation, so we'll have a look at the Q&A session now. But then on the screen is just our contact details. So if you've got an inquiry for sales or even support, please do reach out to us. I've also added my personal email to this one, so you can also contact me directly. So I'm going to move over now to the Q&A mode, and then we'll answer all the questions that you've got for us. So the first question that I've got here, I'm not sure if that was the first one. What about AntiPID and PID recovery in Huawei 100 kilowatt inverters? So on a 100 kilowatt inverter, it's not a built-in function. So unfortunately, on a 100 kilowatt inverter, you do need to buy the Huawei SACU 2000D, which is the AntiPID. But then also on the Huawei SACU 2000D, you can also have your smart logger built into that. So PID, please note on the 100 kTL, it's not supported or it's not built in. So if you're unsure about what inverter is supported, please just reach out to us and we can confirm that for you. But for now, to answer your question, 100 kilowatt, it doesn't have built-in PID. Is there AFCI feature in Huawei? Yes. So the arc fault circuit interrupter is featured in the Huawei inverters. Please note that it is specific to the newer range of inverters. So if we look specifically at the 30, 36, and 40 kTL M0, so the M0 range would not have the built-in AFCI, but then the M3 range of that inverters do have it. And then also on the 100 kTL, it is built in. So the AFCI on 100 kTL would be the M1 Pro version. So just double check in your country specific or your region or your sales representative. Just reach out to them to confirm that it's built in or that they are selling the correct model. But yes, the AFCI feature is available in Huawei inverters. Moving over to the next one. Why is the voltage range for Huawei Sun 2100 kTL written as 1100 max and they said it is 1000 VI max? So I'm not sure your question. Are you referring to the MPPT range? Because the MPPT range is between 200 and 1000 volt. So that range is specific to your MPPT, but the maximum voltage that it can withstand is correct in saying it's 1100. But do note that if it states a maximum withstand voltage of 1100, that should not be for continuous operation. that might just be as low as a 10-second where you have an over voltage of 1100. But if you look at the normal operating range of the MPPT, that's between 200 and 1000 volt. So what would happen is that if your voltage exceeds 1000 volts, let's say for a duration longer than 10 seconds, then the inverter will switch off that specific string or that specific DC switch and raise it as a fault. Then after some time delay, the inverter can rescan or be rebooted. If the over voltage was fixed, it will operate as normal. But if that over voltage is still present, an alarm will be indicated to say that you should please just have a look at your site. You've got more than 1100 volt as a maximum operating range. So please note, operating range for the MPPT is 200 to 1000. The 1.1 1100 volts max, that's just maximum that it can withstand, but it's not for continuous operation. What is the recommended minimum number of optimizers per string? So that depends on your situation or your solution. My recommendation normally is that if you do optimize a string, optimize the full string, but then Huawei does actually suggest or say that if you've got, for instance, 15 panels in a string, you only need to optimize 5 panels or the 5 affected panels. So there is no minimum or maximum. Well, the maximum is depending on the number of modules you've got, but the minimum is dependent on your situation. It can be 2, 3, 5, doesn't matter. But my recommendation is normally to optimize the full string, just so that you ensure that you don't have any problems on that string specifically. Why does the 60 kTL inverters come with H4 connectors while other Huawei inverters come with MC4 connectors? I need to double check myself on that one, Ishrai, but I can confirm it to you on email. I should have your email address. But the difference between normal MC4 and H4 is actually the operating voltage. I think the MC4 is just indicated as 1000 volt operating, but the H4 connector is 1500 volt. So H4 and MC4 connectors are compatible with each other. It's just the voltage specification that it can withstand. That's the difference between them. But the actual connector itself, they are adaptable. Or MC4 and H4, you can use them together. Are the PV optimizers available in the open market? So yes, the 450 watt is definitely available in the open market, well, through either a Huawei value-added partner or through the Huawei distribution channels. The 600 watt that I've mentioned, that has not yet been released to the public. They are still just running through a few tests and compatibilities just to ensure that when they do release it to the market, everything is 100% compatible. Okay, just want to move over to the next question, see what is the next one. Why does the Smart Logger 3000A for global region does not have the 4G feature? Ishrai, as far as I'm familiar with, it depends on the country or region that it's being sold to. In some regions, 4G might not have been certified by the reigning government, or there might be some issues. I know in South Africa we are 4G certified, so that's depending on country regulations. I can double check again this answer for you and reply to you on email. But according to my knowledge, it's a country-specific thing according to country regulations on communication spectrums. Next question from Mohammed. Are we have to install PV optimizer to every single panel or just with having shading issues? So the first answer is you only need to install it to the panels that's got shading issues. So if you've got a 100 kilowatt plant, you've got 10 strings, you do not have to optimize all 10 strings or all 100 panels or whatever your situation might be. You only need to optimize the panels that's affected by shading. But my recommendation always is that if you do have various strings that's connecting, do try and optimize the full string. It's not the most economical solution. The most economical would be to just address that single panel or 2 or 3 panels that's got shade on it. What is the DC to AC ratio in Huawei Design Smart tool? DC to AC ratio, I think there is, it's country specific. Huawei has got a certain table where they've done case scenarios in various countries with the specific irradiance that's involved or that's applicable to the area. So I know it can vary a bit, but normally the DC to AC ratio is between 1.2 and 1.4, with about 1.3 being the sweet spot. The DC to AC ratio only affects your system by either giving you increased time in the morning or in the afternoon where you can get more yield out of the system, but that's all dependent on the irradiance. DC to AC ratio, like I said, is between 1.2 and 1.4. Sweet spot would be 1.3, but it is something that's being picked up on the country that you're in. You might just want to have a look to see if it's not specified somewhere on the Design Smart tool. But Michael, I can confirm that for you, and I will get back to you personally just to give you a 200% accurate answer. Moving over to the next one, Ezekiel. Can Huawei inverters be used for 300 kilowatt mini grids without issues? So your question, there's a lot more factors that's involved in it. You need to give us more details. My first answer would be yes. You can for 300 kilowatt Huawei inverters can be used without any issues for the mini grid. Right, I think that's all the questions that's been done in the Q&A session. Thank you very much for your time. I hope I've managed to answer all of your questions. And please do reach out to us at Huawei Brothers to see how we can assist you. And you'll also reach out to me directly. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.